Welcome to this webinar, and many thanks for taking the time to attend this training on the Trustee Advice Fee Policy. My name is Joe Tadaro, Advisor Education Analyst, and joining me is Neve O'Brien, who is managing the change.
Thanks, Joe, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to be here with you to take you through what the Trustee Advice Fee Policy means for the super and pension products on the North platform, and to help you support you as you get ready for this change. So before we start, I would just like to let you know, if you haven't seen our update already, or perhaps you have, I'd like to reconfirm that we're no longer going live on the North platform on the 12th of December. So we previously said the Trustee Advice Fee Policy will be live for the North products on the North platform from the 12th of December this year. However, we have experienced a technical delay across the business, and it's not related to the policy specifically, but it has had a knock-on effect. So as a result, we are now planning on implementing the Trustee Advice Fee Policy for North products on the 23rd of January 2021. So that 23rd of January 21 is subject to board approval. So as you're probably aware, this is a trustee policy. So anything we do in terms of the policy itself or the dates goes to our trustee board for approval. So there will be a board meeting on the 10th of December, and we will propose our new implementation date then. And subject to that, we will proceed and implement on the 23rd of January 21. So throughout this webinar, we will refer to 23rd of January as the implementation date, subject to board approval.
Great, thanks Neve. So today we'll share screenshots of North Online with you. If you could please bear in mind that the final screen, when built, may vary a little from when you see here today. We will hold another webinar in January with a system demonstration of the built changes in North Online. You'll also have a chance to submit questions throughout this webinar. A key part of today is so your questions can be answered by a Trustee Advice Fee Policy or North Platform product expert. So as we go through the training and questions occur to you, select the chat icon on the left-hand side menu and type a question. You can ask questions throughout. All of your questions will be answered within the next 24 to 48 hours, and we'll email you all directly with the questions and answers along with a copy of this training pack. If you're having audio issues, go ahead and refresh your browser. Go ahead and close it down and reopen it, and that should fix it for you. However, if you're still having continuing issues, please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to North Online. So we'll jump onto North Online to show you where that will be. So onto North Online, if you hover over the support menu item right across the top, head down to training videos. And then once in training videos, scroll all the way down and you'll see the heading webinar recordings. And this is where all of our webinars are uploaded to North Online. So you can review this content again or refer a colleague if desired. So let's get started with our presentation today. The reason for the training is to help you be prepared for when the policy goes live for North products. This learning is separated into 3 different learning modules. The first module is an overview and walkthrough of the Trustee Advice Fee Policy. Next, we'll focus on the key changes on North Online that you'll need to know. And then we'll summarize what you can do to get ready and where you can get help and find useful resources. The learning objectives that we're seeking to achieve today in this webinar are that we're looking for you to understand the policies and the reason for it, to understand and be familiar with what is changing, and lastly, to understand how you can be prepared when it becomes effective in January. So let's get into the content of this. I'll hand you over to Neve to talk you through the Trustee Advice Fee Policy.
Thank you, Joe. So what is the background to the Trustee Advice Fee Policy? Well, the rules around a trustee's obligations for advice fees charged have been under review. And as a result, draft legislation is with Parliament at the moment to make amendments in this regard, also to implement recommendations of the Haynes Royal Commission. The expected legislation specifies that annual advice fee deductions for ongoing fees are to be agreed and in place with clients. It also says that as trustee, we will be obligated to check that you have collected your client's written consent to a one-off or ongoing advice fee being charged, and that you have provided that consent to us. Also in the expected legislation is that advice fees can no longer be charged to a member's MySuper account balance. However, we are aware, and I'm aware, that this is not relevant to North products. The trustee advice fee policy incorporates all of these legislative obligations, but it also sets out rules for charging advice fees related to super and pension products in the form of advice fee caps and account balance minimums. So why is there a trustee advice fee policy? It is the trustee's role to always act in the best interests of members. So the policy has been developed to provide guidelines around protecting superannuation members from the erosion of their superannuation accounts by inappropriate advice fees. It has been designed to ensure members have visibility of advice fees and that they have the opportunity and ability to assess the value and provision of advice services that they receive through an annual consent process. The policy is also assisting the trustee to comply with its legal obligations, and it's helping to clarify what the legislation is expecting and what it means for both you, your clients, and for AMP. From 23rd of January 2021, and that's subject to that date being approved by our board, the trustee advisory policy will be applicable to all super and pension products that are on the North platform, and those are all listed here. As well as the legislative aspects, the policy has a few rules and caps that will be applicable to all existing and new advice fee arrangements. So there's 4 elements that I will call out to you here. The first one is regarding transaction-based advice fees. So no transactional advice fees can be charged to super or pension accounts from January 21. This means that any advice fees that are transaction-based, such as contributions, rollovers, or listed securities, will not be permitted to be deducted from a super or pension account from the 23rd of January 21. And in fact, the system functionality is the functionality that designates a fee for a transaction will actually be removed from the North platform where it's related to a super or pension account. So from January, you won't be able to do that once the policy is live in North Online. In terms of advice fee caps, there's a one-off fixed dollar fee cap, and that's over a rolling 5-year period. And that's based on the total client balance across all of our clients' super and pension accounts. That could be Mine North, Summit, Generations, iAccess, so the total of all those accounts. And the one-off fee cap is $5,500, including GST, for balances below $500,000. And it's $11,000, including GST, for balances of $500,000 and above. And that's over a rolling 5-year period. There's also an ongoing advice fee cap, and that's 2.2% per annum, including GST. And again, that's based on the total client balance, and that will be deducted from the client's account monthly. In addition, an account must have a minimum account balance of $10,000 before an advice fee can be deducted. So this is based on the account balance for ongoing fees, or for one-off fees, it's based on the combined balances across all of those products that you see here. So Mine North, Summit, Generations, and iAccess super and pension accounts. The policy does allow for exceptions to be charged outside of these caps in specific circumstances. So let me talk you through now what that looks like. You can apply for an advice fee cap exception if you feel it is in the best interest of a member. There are a number of minimum criteria that must be met. So the total client balance must be in excess of $50,000. The advice fee must meet the sole purpose test. And there must be a justifiable valid business reason to charge above the fee cap that you are able to articulate. Approved exceptions are valid for the period of the fee agreement that you've quoted in your exception request. So when you get your approval, that will be made clear to you, but the exception relates to the fee arrangement to which the permission has been granted. And please bear in mind that exception requests are considered on a case-by-case basis, so there's no guarantees that they will be approved. So the form and the step-by-step instructions on how to apply for an exception can be found on North Online under Product and Forms. So perhaps, Joe, you could show us where that is.
Thanks, Steve. Let's jump onto North Online. So we're back on North Online, and if you hover this time over Products across the top, head down to Forms. And then under Forms, we're going to scroll all the way down the bottom. We're looking for the heading Advice Fee Exceptions Request Form. So we're going to go ahead and open up the document hyperlink, and it's going to bring you to the Excel spreadsheet. And the first tab is the wrap instructions. So we'll run through all of those instructions that Neve ran through with you just before. And then we've got the exceptions request form. So this is the form you would fill out. We do also have an example. So if you click to the example tab, it runs through a particular scenario where Bill the advisor has reviewed his client base and identified that he's charging the ongoing fee at 2.2% for his client. So the advice is given to his client on a quarterly basis, as the investment strategy inside Super includes securities portfolio, which requires a high level of ongoing management. So what Bill would need to do is fill in the details just exactly like this. So this is the example you might want to follow. So have a bit of a read through that. You've got the exceptions request form. Once you've filled that out, then within your wrap instructions, you would email this to retail_pricing_sip@amp.com.au. So I'll hand you back over to Neve, who will talk about the rules applicable to advice fee arrangements.
So as well as fee caps, there are also a number of advice fee rules that will be applicable to existing and new advice fee arrangements from the 23rd of January 2021. These are all laid out in the expected legislation. So the first is client consent. So as trustee, we will require evidence of member consent prior to any deduction of advice fees from a member's account. Also, a member can withdraw consent at any time with immediate effect. If that happens, however, you will receive a notice of the cancellation, which will be generated based on the instruction we have received from the client. And please note that client consent is not required for existing advice fee arrangements. It's only required for any new arrangements set up from the 23rd of January. In the next section of the webinar, we'll talk you through that consent process. The second aspect relates to new advice fee arrangements. So all new advice fee arrangements will be for a maximum of 12 months only. And in terms of existing advice fee arrangements, all undated advice fee arrangements which exist before the go-live date of the policy in January will continue until the 31st of December 2021, unless the legislation specifies otherwise. So that date, 31st of December 21, is a legislative date, and we will certainly update you if there's any change in that. If there's no change, all your existing advice fee arrangements as of when the policy go live will continue until the 31st of December 21, or until a new agreement, if you want to set a new agreement up until that start date. So you can replace a current with a new agreement, and that will obviously terminate it, else your existings will exist until 31st of December 21. You will also receive notifications prior to existing arrangements expiring. So once we go live, there will be alert notifications that you'll get when advice fees are expiring, and you'll get those both 30 and 60 days before an advice fee arrangement is expired. So now we'll take you through what's changing in North Online, and we're delighted to talk you through this, and I'll hand you back to Joe to take you through that. Thank you, Joe.
Thanks very much for that, Neve. So let's look at the changes on North Online. There are 4 key areas to call out here. First, there will be an updated advisor remuneration screen. Secondly, we're introducing a new advice fee screen, which is exciting, and I'll talk you through that in a moment's time. And then there's the consent process, where we'll show you how to upload the client consent as a part of the pre-submission process. Finally, I'll talk to you about the advice fee status and how to check the status of a submitted fee request. When updating the advisor remuneration screen for the existing advice fee arrangements, an end date can now be added against existing advice fee arrangements on the advisor remuneration screen. Undating existing advice fees will cease on the 31st of December 2021. Entering an advice fee end date is the only modification that can be now made to the advisor remuneration screen. For entering new advice fee arrangements, for all one-off and ongoing advice fee arrangements will be entered in the newly created advice fees menu option. A new ongoing advice fee can be set up by clicking the Add Agreement button. A new one-off advice fee can be set up by clicking the Add Fee button. The advisor remuneration screen will be removed for an account once the new agreement has commenced. So you'll no longer be able to see it, it will be grayed out. Once you hit the Add Agreement button against the ongoing advice fees, this section expands to show the fields relating to ongoing advice fees. You'll see that there is an start and end date that should be entered for ongoing advice fees, and also fees now entered will be on a per annum basis. So fee deductions will be monthly, but you'll need to enter that per annum fee here. Also, it's worth noting that ongoing fees going forward will be deducted at the start date of the agreement. So for example, if you set the fee start date to the 15th of the month, the first fee will be charged on the 14th of next month. Also, a new feature for ongoing advice fees is that whilst you can have one fee arrangement in place, you can now set up another by forward dating it. And that's up to 120 days. As long as the two dates don't overlap, you can have two agreements set up here at the same time. To do that, on the screen, you will click Next Agreement, and that would allow you to set up the next advice fee arrangement, which will start as soon as the one you've previously entered here concludes. You can also click Replace Current Agreement if you want to stop the current agreement early and replace it with another one, and you can also select Terminate Current Agreement here, and that will cease your current agreement and no more fees will be deducted. This is the advice fees pre-submit screen, and this is where the client consent will be added. There are two client consent options, and this screen will guide you through what documentation is required to be uploaded in both cases. If you select paper-based signature here, then a copy of the client ID will be required to be uploaded the first time that you do this for the client. Once we have that client ID on file, it will no longer show up as a requirement on the screen, and there'll be a little X here to indicate it will no longer be required. If you choose the electronic signature option, then a digital certification will be requested to be uploaded. For all new advice fee arrangements, however, an advice fee alteration form must be downloaded and completed and signed with your client. This is the client's consent. Finally, the attestation tick box will need to be checked for you once you submit the advice fees. Once submitted, it will go to the North Service Centre for validation of the documentation received. And once approved by the North Service Centre, the advice fees will be active on the account. This screen relates to the advice fee menu only. So please note, for new business applications, the pre-submit documentation screen will look different. You will still need to print the application form, get it signed and uploaded with client ID. If you want to check on the status of submitted fees once you've uploaded your client documentation, you can go to the advice fees menu in inquiry mode or to the snapshot menu, and you'll see a red icon displayed beside the fees that are awaiting North Service Centre validation. When you hover over the icon, it will say with the North Service Centre for validation. Advice fees won't be deducted until the North Service Centre have validated the client consent documentation received. Once they've done this, the red icon will no longer be displayed. Also, the activities section has been updated for the new advice fee changes. There is a new activity called advice fee maintenance. Within that activity, you will see what the stage the activity is at. So for example, client communication is being verified for North Service Centre activities being completed, or client authorization has been verified and activity is completed. And there's a list of a few others that we have there on your screen. Once fees are in place, you can also check how the fees are performing against the fee caps. In particular, tracking the one-off advice fee cap at the client level will be visible in the advice fee menu option. This table in the advice fee screen shows how much a one-off fee advice cap has been used and how much is available, so you can see that 26% has been used from the total cap of $5,000. Later in 2021, we'll also introduce this graph that will show the same information, but in this different format. Tracking against ongoing advice fee caps will be available through the advisor reporting in a new report, which will be introduced later in 2021. And our next page will outline this report and others coming through 2021. So these reports will be introduced later in 2021. First, there are the North Event Alert notifications 60 and 30 days before a fee arrangement expires. Also, there'll be a report available that you can run a report based at the start and end dates of your ongoing fee arrangements. These both will help you manage your ongoing arrangements against the expiry dates. During 2021, there will also be reporting available that will show how your fee arrangement are tracking against those caps. To sum up these changes, let's look at how the policy maps against your advice process. So, in this first stage in the initial engagement with your client, where you haven't previously provided client ID for verification, include that as a request in the welcome or meeting pack with your client, so it feels like a pretty seamless experience. And at your advice formulation and documentation stage, we'd ask that you take the policy into account, and also at this stage, you can consider whether you think an exception would be appropriate and apply for that. You might enter the fee details in Save to Resume at this stage. During the advice presentation to your client, you would simply get your client's signature on the product application form in case of the new business, or the advice fee alteration form where you're renewing or adding to the fees. Then when you submit or upload the form in North Online with the client ID. Again, to remind you that ongoing advice fee arrangements for a maximum of 12 months only, and that aligns to your annual review process reasonably well, I hope. Also, you can forward date an ongoing advice fee arrangement by 120 days. So I'm going to hand you back over to Neve, who's going to talk about what you need to do to prepare.
Thank you, Joe. So now let's talk through a few things that you can do to help you to be prepared. Firstly, in terms of your existing fee arrangements, be checking whether any of your clients' current arrangements sit outside the fee caps. We have data files on Portal to help you to do that. So please check those. And if you need any other information or support or thinking around that, please speak to your BDM and they'll help you however they can. Secondly is in relation to Safe to Resume transactions. So if you can just please be aware that as we come into the cutover, so from North Online as it is today to North Online as it will be on Saturday, the 23rd of January. So there'll be cutover as of close of business Friday, 22nd of January. and again, those dates to be confirmed. But any advice fees that are sitting in Save to Resume as of close of business Friday, 22nd of January, will be lost as we cut over to the changes, because you've seen today how the advice fee screens are changing, the advisor enumeration screen. So all of the changes going on would mean any advice fee arrangements details that are sitting in Save to Resume would be lost as of the cutover. So I'll show you in a minute a list of transactions that will be impacted. So please just make sure as we're coming into that cutover to the policy going live that you clear out any advice fees in your Save to Resume transactions. And finally, it's about client IDs. So just checking if you have currently in your own files valid client IDs. And if you don't, to begin to ask for those as part of your client meeting packs and your client engagements. So that is, as Joe mentioned, becomes sort of a seamless way of working with your clients, or certainly setting them up for the first time. Once you've submitted those IDs for the first time, you won't need to do it again. So at the end of this webinar, we'll give you a list of resources that you can check out to help you, get ready. And in particular, we've given the address there for the data files, and an address where you can find a list of those Save to Resume transactions. So all of that resourcing is available to you, and those addresses are at the back of this training webinar pack. Okay, so this is a list of the transactions that will be impacted when we go live. So the changes will impact existing Save to Resume transactions that contain advice fees, and they will also impact transactions that are not specifically advice fee changes, but have advice fee details included in those communications. So you can see here those transactions that are listed. So there are transactions like advisor enumeration and transition to advice that will be completely impacted due to the nature of those being advice fees. And then you have other transactions like create new account, or account transfer, or recast that are only partially advice fees. So the advice fee elements will be impacted if they're in Save to Resume as of close of business 22nd of January, but the other pieces of those transactions will not be impacted. So let me show you that list of support resources that I mentioned a few moments ago. So you can see here addresses of where to find everything. So under the impacted existing agreements data files, we have our data files in there that shows where there are current fee arrangements with clients that will be impacted by the policy. If you need any help to understand that data, please refer to the file that's referenced here, Understanding the Trustee Advice Fee Policy data file, and that will give you clear guidance on the data files. There's also the listing of impacted transactions that we've just looked at. So you can find that on North Online, and it's under Portal Products, Trustee Advice Fee Policy, Other Information, North Online, Save to Resume Transactions. And also here is the location of the fee exception form that Joe showed you a little bit earlier. So that's sitting under North Products and Forms. We also have a site on Portal, so all of the information is there, and that's Portal Products, Trustee Advice Fee Policy, and things like frequently asked questions are available there. But please continue to let us know if you have any questions that we're not answering. So email afp@amp.com.au or contact your BDM. There's also a link there to the ASIC legislation, or guidance on the legislation. So if you're interested in understanding more about the legislation and the why of it, you can certainly find the ASIC guidance on it there at that link here. And there will be more webinars. So we'll be holding another webinar on the 2nd of December, and that will be more general. So we'll look a little bit across platform then, and we'll, if there's anything else, questions or anything we find are coming up that we haven't answered, we will make sure we give content then. But really that's it's broader than North. It'll be a little bit cross-platform there on the 2nd of December. So register for that if you're interested. And also, due to the date change for the North Online platform, we are going to run another webinar in January. And in that, we will show you a system demo. So the system will actually be built then, and we can show you in the system itself the screens that we've shown to you today. So register for that. And should our date change in any way, that webinar date will also be adjusted to suit our final date. All recordings of webinars can be found at the location below. So that's Portal Products, Trustee Advice Fee Policy, and then you'll see under there the Trustee Advice Fee Policy webinars. So there was also a Master Trust webinar at the start of this week, which the recording of that will be on there already. So you can find that and listen to that if you're interested. So thank you. I'm wondering now, Joe, if we have had questions coming in and or if there are others, people maybe have others now that they want to add, have a few more minutes to add those or send them in.
Thanks so much, Neve. You're exactly right. There are a lot of questions coming through. And I'll ask at this stage, if you haven't asked a question, now's your opportunity. We're going to leave this webinar open for a couple of minutes more, so you have the ability to ask your question. And of course, again, we'll endeavour to get back to you within the next 24 to 48 hours. We'll also collate all of those questions and answers along with this pack too, which we'll send out to you all. We'd like to thank you very much for your attendance today. We really appreciate it. And we hope this helps in the lead up to the changes that are coming soon. From me, it's goodbye.
And goodbye from me, Neve. Thank you again for being here with us today. And as I said, we want to be as supporting as possible as we can with you. So if there's anything we can do, please let us know and get in touch. And thank you very much and have a great Christmas.